youth and their families last year. Member Stewart, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was certainly my pleasure to attend that opening. A lot of dedicated hard work by the board of the Pastone Foundation and whatever, raising money to put together a wonderful building out there and a wonderful structure that not only helps the youth, but I think some people forget that they also help the families of the youth who are suffering from mental health issues. And the solutions and the strategies for that come from the whole family being involved. And so I think it's a great asset to Niagara, and I look forward to the service and the board's continued partnership and support of this group, because again, as I mentioned in my comments earlier, you know, good efforts put in with the youth are going to pay the dividends when they're adults. So I think that's so important. So I was pleased to attend on behalf of the board.
Thank you for that. Next, the Ontario Association of Police Services Board Spring Conference and Annual General Meeting. The Ontario Association of Police Services Boards hosted its 2017 Spring Conference and Annual General Meeting from June 21st to the 24th at Blue Mountain Conference Centre in Collingwood. This year's conference theme was Preparing for New Police Services Act, and the program featured a variety of special guest speakers, educational sessions, and networking opportunities. Vice Chair Ganzel, members Marshall and Stewart, the board's executive director, and I attended the conference. As part of the conference program, police boards discussed diversity, equity, and inclusion. We also heard from the ministry that the ministry has been working hard to address filling vacancies for police board member appointments across the province. The ministry indicated that one of the biggest challenges they have is getting a pool of qualified candidates, and police boards were asking to encourage candidates in the community to apply for police board appointments. I'm pleased to say that our board has been proactive in this regard and has called for greater equity and diversity in the public appointment process. At our past monthly meetings, we encouraged qualified members from our diverse communities to apply. Our board has had inquiries from women and visible minorities who were interested in becoming police board members. These individuals referred to the ministry and MPP Bradley's office for more information on the public appointment process. We know that a number of people have contacted the Premier's office and submitted applications to serve on the board for future appointments. As board chair, I hope the future provincial appointments will consider more women and members of the visible minority communities, because it's important that our board reflects the diversity of the people of Niagara. Excuse me. Next, the Regional Municipality of Niagara NRPS Joint Facilities Steering Committee meeting. On June 27th, Vice Chair Ganzel attended the Joint Regional Police Facility Steering Committee meeting for discussion on police facility matters. Vice Chair Ganzel regularly attends these monthly meetings in his role as Chair of the Board's Accommodations Committee. Ken, do you have any comments on this?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly on this, we're getting to the point where we're get most of the numbers that we need for making a decision on one district and moving forward on another of issues is finally coming to you know, getting it on paper in front of the board. So we are hoping that sometime in the latter part of July there will be a meeting allocated for that, where the board will specifically deal with those issues. And the site has sat now for about a year, fenced in. We have a very good crop of weeds growing there, even though I will admit it's regional property, so the police don't have to mow it. But we do eventually need to get moving on this, and so the board will be discussing this sometime in July. Thank you.
Next, CAPG Annual Conference. The Canadian Association of Police Governance is hosting its 28th Annual Conference from July 13th to July 16th in Montreal, Quebec. This year's national theme is the future of police governance, and it will include participants from across Canada and the world to provide delegates with a unique opportunity to learn and discuss various aspects of public safety and governance. Vice Chair Ganzel, Member Stewart, the board's executive director, and I will be attending the conference. This starts on July 13th. The chief is retiring July 14th. You're going to come anyways?
You ban?
Last, upcoming PSB meetings. The next PSB committee meeting is Thursday, July 6th at 8:30 in the community room at police headquarters. And the next board meeting is Thursday, July 28th at 8:30 a.m. here at the police headquarters. And that's it for my comments. Chief, I'd go to you.
Yes, thank you, and good morning again to the board and members that are present with us. My first comment will be a little bit repetitive on some of the changes, but again, I thank you for the kind words that you had to say in regards to me, and it's now time to move on and celebrate the changes that the organization will face. You've introduced Bill 40. I'm happy to say that Bill's been a 28-year veteran of the RCMP. As you've mentioned, served as Assistant Commissioner of Lower Mainland, BC. Has a great deal of experience in the many areas that the Chair has spoken of. We've had the opportunity, Bill's been here with us this week. I've had phone conversations with him in the past. His memory's a little sharper than mine because he actually recalled that we did meet about 15 or 20 years ago, I guess, at a homicide investigation in Peel Region. But I certainly know of Bill's experience and his abilities, and he's got a deep dive to get assimilated into the organization. He's certainly making those efforts, and we're taking our time to get him introduced to everybody and get him fitted up with uniform, and I'm confident that Bill will be an integral part of the team moving forward, so welcome, Bill. In addition, you heard me speak, and I know you've spoken of the strength of our organization. I have some promotions that we've just completed in our senior management team in the last few weeks. I think they're all here, and I think you're aware of them, but publicly like to advise we have 2 new superintendents to replace vacancies. Superintendent Cindy White. Cindy's right? Off to the right. They move chairs around behind me when I know we have. The Superintendent White, she's a 31-year member of the service. Her last assignment was as district commander of one district in St. Catharines, where she served that area very well in one of our busiest divisions. She's also been a significant role player in the implementation of the MCRT team that Member Stewart spoke of, and has made that into a success along with the people that are working there for her. We have assigned Cindy to be in charge of district operations, so she'll be overseeing all the uniform presence right across the region now. So we congratulate Cindy on your promotion.
Chief, I'm going to interrupt you. Every time I'm going to ask the officer to come to the podium, if you don't mind. Just say a couple comments to us, if you don't mind. You don't have any advance notice, the others do.
No, that's
now,
fair warning to the other 3 we're going to get to in a minute.
Yeah, they're going to be coming up too.
2 of them just left.
Cindy, you have the podium to say whatever you want.
Good morning, Chair, board members, the executive team. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm tremendously thrilled, particularly having district ops. I am so entrenched in our uniform complement and making sure that they get the support and the encouragement that they need. So I sincerely thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. We won't be asking questions. Chief, thank you.
Second promotion, Richard Frayne, whom we were all very familiar with, primarily, although he's done many, many things, but his role in the facilities project over the years engaged the board probably more than some of the other senior officers. Richard's also a 31-year member of the service. Recently has been assigned as the officer in charge of the communications unit, overseeing the implementation of the new radio system and the supervision of the communications unit. As well, as I mentioned, he's a project manager he was, I can say Joe Matthews' right-hand man, but I think they both contributed equally to the success of the headquarters facility project. Richard's been assigned as the operational support superintendent, so he'll be overseeing the unit that he's in right now and leading that, and he'll stay, well, I can say, but I assume he will stay involved in the continued operations of the one district facility project as well.
Richard, congratulations to you too, and come on up to the podium, please. Is your track record on sick time still intact?
Still intact, yes.
This man has been on forever, and he's never taken a sick day. Am I correct in saying that? Like, how many years have you been on?
I think it's 29 years now.
That's congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And I was hoping that I was going to speak, so I've prepared some brief notes here to speak about. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate your comments, and I appreciate the confidence of the chief and the executive team in promoting me to superintendent. I'm really looking forward to working with the new deputy. I think we've got a lot of great times ahead of us and great work to do, so I'm really enthused and looking forward to it for sure. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Chief?
So with the promotion of Richard and Cindy, obviously created 2 vacancies in the inspector role, and we have promoted 2 members to fill that. Dave Masadi was one of the successful candidates, James Lee, the second. They're both going to be promoted to the rank of inspector on July 2nd. There says new assignments to be determined, but have they been informed? I think we determined that yesterday, did we not? So they'll both take positions in the duty office, which is where most of our inspectors start. Jim Lee is a 29-year member of the service. He's most recently served as the officer in charge of 1 district detective office, but he's also been filling the role of acting inspector, which was the vacancy created when Cindy came here to fill the role of Superintendent Carter. So they both have a great deal of experience. Dave Mazzotti's 29 years of policing experience as well, with a combination of service between Niagara region, 15 years, and he's finally broken the 50% barrier, 14 years with York region. Recently, he has been assigned to the Professional Standards Unit and has a long history in investigative work as well. So I guess probably Dave Mazzotti was on the list from last, so Dave, you get to set the stage for Jim's speech.
Dave, congratulations, you're the first one.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief. I'm going to keep my comments very brief. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chief, the deputies, and the supers, and giving me the opportunity to be here. I look forward to continuing a great career, fantastic career, and hopefully help the members of the service and move forward. But thank you very much.
Thank you, and Jim Lee. Thank you. I take it you're Alfie Lee's son?
Yes, sir.
I served under Alfie. Was he a superintendent or a deputy chief?
He was superintendent here.
Back in the 70s. That's how many years I go back. Thank you.
Yes. I'd like to thank the chair and the board, as well as the members of the senior management team. Unlike the chief, I'm not very comfortable with public speaking, and I'd rather be the first one through the door at a bar fight than standing here in front of you today. But I look forward to providing support and supervision to our frontline officers and providing the best service possible to the members of our community. And thank you.
Jim and Dave, congratulations. Chief?
Very good. My next comments are going to be in regards. Can you turn that mic off? Oh, we'll just get an echo. Thanks. Next comments will be in regards to our recent, you touched on it, the Special Olympics. Special Olympics, as most people know, is the charity of choice for law enforcement, certainly across Ontario, but right around the world. There's an incredible bond that's been developed between law enforcement and the Special Olympians. So I approached, we've done a lot here with that. We do the torch run and the torch ride every year and all kinds of different things. They've had games here in the past. About a year ago, I approached Glenn McDonnell, the president CEO of Special Olympics Ontario, and told him that we would be keenly interested in hosting some form of games here in the Niagara region. You know, it was easy for me to make that offer and him to offer it to us, and then I just had to turn around and find all my people to run the program. So, you know, many volunteers across the service, but Alita Brown, I don't think Alita's here today, but Alita and Marco Gianico, my executive officer, took the lead on this with many other volunteers. As a result, on June 12th and 13th, the event hosted over 700 athletes, 200 coaches, and 300 volunteers from across the province. They competed in 5 different sports: bocce, which I didn't know was a sport, but Lisa told me it's a blood sport. Basketball, soccer, track and field, and floor hockey. We partnered with Brock University. They hosted the opening ceremonies there, which I know a number of the people here were present. Was an absolutely incredible event. If you've never been to it, you need to go and watch one of those opening ceremonies. I've always said it's not the Special Olympics, it's really the Olympics. And it was an incredible event put on by them and all of our volunteers. We also partnered with the Niagara Olympic Track Club, which hosted our track and field events. Gatorade Garden City Complex hosted the floor hockey competitions. And other partners with Brock University, City of St. Catharines, Niagara Region, Niagara EMS, the District School Board of Niagara, the Niagara Catholic District School Board, and a special big thanks to Great Wolf Lodge. They hosted their car wash, which they've done every year here, which is a charity. And I was approached by Keith Simmons and said that they wanted to direct the money into something that was associated with the police and the fire department, EMS. And I said, we're hosting these games. These are expensive games. We need the money. They're funded strictly from charity. So all of the money was donated in a 4-hour period at their car wash down there in the pouring rain. They raised $132,000, which was donated. And I was kind of puzzled as to how that works, but I've now learned, I guess others knew before, people come for a car wash, but when they're at the car wash, they get the opportunity to purchase a discounted rate, whether it's an overnight rate for a family at Great Wolf Lodge sometime during the course of the year, or an all-day pass at a drastically reduced rate, and all the money that comes from those purchases goes into the charity. So it was $132,000, all of which is a donation by Great Wolf Lodge. So we thank them for that. And we have about a 2 or 3 minute video which was put together by the greatest video unit in the history of mankind. The Niagara Regional Police Services video production people shot, produced, edited, and have created this video for us. It's just about a 2 minute montage on the games themselves. Thanks very much, Jamie. And I think that video will show you in the comments that we've made that I think the NRPS hosting these games is probably one of the most positive legacies that will be left and carried on for this organization. They do great work. So.
Chief, I normally don't do this, but I'm going to interrupt you and congratulate you and the service and anybody that was involved in that. I ran Special Olympics events in the 80s, and if this doesn't bring tears to you with joy or whatever, then you're not human. And I saw your emotions afterwards, and I'm not knocking you at all because I was the same way. The emotions from these people are wonderful. It's right for all the right reasons, so I commend you and everybody else. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much. It's a great event. Just move on with a little bit of the statistical information we provide. So far this year, there have been 2 homicides in the region. And I'm sorry, I don't recall, they both solved? Both solved? Yeah, both of those homicides have been solved so far this year, keeping up with the great work that our investigative units do. Robberies across the region, there have been 12 robberies, 3 of which have cleared. 2 were unfounded. There are a number of others that are still ongoing with no arrests at this point. We always have a challenge with fatalities. Currently, up year to date up to May 2017, there have been 8 fatalities. May was not a good month. I have 3 fatal collisions to speak to you on. First one on May 4th, excuse me, at about 10 o'clock p.m., we received a call, single motor vehicle collision on Burger Road near Bowen Road in the town of Erie, or Fort Erie rather. Single motor vehicle was northbound when the 23-year-old male lost control of the vehicle, left the roadway, rolled the vehicle. The male was a sole occupant and received fatal injuries as a result of that collision. Collision is still under investigation. On May 12th, Bunting Road and Berkeley Drive at about 11:55 in the morning, received a call, a motor vehicle collision on Bunting, as I said, Bunting Road in Berkeley. 43-year-old female resident of Welland was driving a motor vehicle. A car on Berkeley made a left turn in front of a 2006 motorcycle being operated by a 54-year-old St. Catharines male. The motorcycle came into collision. The driver was thrown to the ground, and as a result, the motorcycle operator received fatal injuries. That collision remains under investigation. There's some evidence that the operation of the motorcycle was being operated in a dangerous manner prior to the collision. Unfortunately, on the heels of us discussing motorcycles, the third fatality we had this month was also a motorcycle fatality on 7:40 p.m. on May 16th on the Niagara Parkway. There were a group of motorcycles on a ride together. 54-year-old male resident of Fort Erie was riding the front southbound on the parkway, lost control of the motorcycle for an unknown reason at this point, crossed into a lane and struck a vehicle, and he also received fatal injuries at the scene of that collision. Just a couple of newsworthy items I want to make you aware of. A robbery update. You may recall there was a violent assault in downtown St. Catharines in and around the Performing Arts Center, and there was some video that was circulated. It was a street robbery. That was on April 22nd. As of end of May, I believe there were 5 suspects identified and have all been arrested and charged. 5 youths and 1 adult and charged in regards to that violent assault. We had great cooperation from the public and the media in relation to that. On Wednesday, May 31st, about $285,000 in marijuana along with a quantity of cocaine was seized following a number of raids in the Niagara on the Lake area that was operated by the NRPS Guns and Gang Grow Unit. Started the investigation in February, focusing on a man that was believed to be trafficking in the area. They executed 8 search warrants in St. Catharines, Welland, and Niagara on the Lake, and with assistance alongside CBSA. They also recovered $500,000 in cash. Also on Tuesday, June 13th, a Welland man was facing charges. He was arrested with a kilogram of cocaine in his possession, street value of approximately $100,000. Subsequent search of his home turned up 28 marijuana plants, a street value of $28,000. Another challenge with our repeat offenders. On Wednesday, June 14th, a Niagara Falls man was arrested facing charges for the second time in less than a month. He was first arrested and charged with possession of cocaine, a street value of $125,000, and oxycodone pills and cash. BMW was also seized on May 25th. On June 13th, the same man was arrested again. Police discovered over $5,000 worth of cocaine in his possession. And last of all, I'll tell you of Thursday, June 22nd, members of, again, the gunning gangs and the St. Catharines Street Crime Unit conducted an investigation of the sale of cocaine and heroin in the city of Niagara Falls. As a result, they executed search warrants that were granted as judicial authorizations to enter search at Niagara Falls home, seized $20,000 worth of cocaine, $10,000 in heroin, and also seized a .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol and ammunition. And that's all the information I have for you at this time in the public meeting.
Do any of the board members have any comments or questions for the chief about his report? Okay, thank you, Chief. Next, we have a presentation, draft NRPS audit of the financial statements. What's the name? Jessica Hansler, if you don't mind coming to the podium, please. And can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the slate? Member Stewart, Member Ganzel. So Jessica's going to do a presentation on the NRPS audited financial statements for the year ended 2016, I'm sorry. So.
Okay.
Defer to you. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we were engaged to provide 2 separate reports for Niagara Regional Police Services for the year ended December 31st, 2016. The first engagement was to perform specified procedures on the statement of receipts, disbursements, bank balances, and available fund balances. And it should be noted that our performed procedures do not constitute an audit of that statement, and the results of our performed procedures are noted in our report. Before I move on to the second one, were there any questions on that report? No?
We might ask you questions later.
Okay, so
thank you.
The second engagement was an audit of the Statement of Operations for Niagara Regional Police Services. So in our opinion, the Statement of Operations for the year ended December 31st, 2016 is prepared in all material respects in accordance with the basis of accounting that's described in Note 2 to that statement. With respect to reportable matters, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls throughout the course of our audits. Management provided us with full access to the books and records in order for us to complete our audit procedures. So thanks to Lisa and Laura for that and their team. And we are also not aware of any subsequent events that would impact the statement of operations as currently presented. Any questions?
Member Marshall.
Thank you. I'm quite concerned that we're not setting up an allowance for the future benefits. Do we have any idea what the total value of those future benefits that we owe is?
I'd like to redirect any financial questions to management.
So are you talking about the reserves and allowance for future benefits? You should, I'll send it, sorry. I'm going to refer you, I'll forward you the reserve policy from last month and the reserve report from last month, or the month before, I'm not sure. It details about the future allowance for future benefits, and they were pulled out as part of prior year. So all the I don't know why, is it working? Yeah, all the details are in the reserve report that we gave you last month and the month before, so I'll send it to you.
Any other questions? No, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's all? Okay, thank you very much. So, all those in favor of this presentation? I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more question from Member Marshall. Hit your button, Bob, please.
I refer you to the statement of receipts and disbursements. Mm-hmm. And you may want to refer this to Lisa also, but the first question is there's a $40,000 transfer from the operating fund.
Yeah, so I think Lisa would be best to answer that question as well. We only did the specific procedures that we mentioned in our report.
So are you talking about the special fund or the regular operating statements? I think you're talking about the special funds. Oh, transfer from the operating fund. Okay, so these are the transfers that we make to for the informant, and they're budgeted within our operating fund to cover informant costs.
So it's a reimbursement to the informant fund, is that?
No, it's not a reimbursement. We actually budget for it in our operating fund to pay for informant fees. So what we do is we budget it within special investigations. We transfer the money to the special fund, and that's how we manage it through the special fund.
Okay. On that same report, Lisa, there's $117,000 return of funds.
Okay, so if you remember, as part of last year end, we noted, and the auditors noted, we worked together on this, that there in 2015 year end, there was, we identified funds that were deposited in error. They were returned in May and June of 2016. It all was done as part of 2015 year end. They were returned in May and June. Since then, with the new property and evidence unit that we have set up within this headquarters, we froze all transfers at that point. We set up new processes and put them in place to mitigate any future errors. And this was all detailed in a report in May 2016 where we explained how the errors happened, and we explained the new processes and procedures that were put in place with property and evidence to ensure that that didn't happen again.
Okay. Finally, can you explain the $55,000 transfers to operations?
Yeah, so as part of the 2016 budget, when we were trying to get to zero, which I can't remember, we budgeted to transfer funds from the operating to help us get down to zero in the budget, so we made those transfers.
Thank you. One final question. Did in your audit anyway touch the reserve accounts?
In the statement of operations, no. So we were engaged to perform an audit on the statement of operations, which would include the revenues and expenditures for the year ended December 31st, 2016. So we did not audit any of the reserve balances.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Member Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. To the presenter, I'm wondering if there's additional information beyond what really amounts to one page, page 3. I see it's kind of, it's a large organization, $135 million, and it's boiled down to just a couple of lines.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's all we were engaged to report on. Like, this is not a full set of financial statements, and we do note that in the note to the financial statement. And it's prepared in accordance with the basis of accounting that's described in the note as well. So yes, it is not a full picture, but that's what we were engaged to report on, and that's what we did.
So who engages you to report on it this way?
The region.
The Niagara region asked you to report on it this way?
Yes.
And I thought the police services or the police services board did the hiring of the accounting firm and gave the direction of, I could be wrong, but I want to clarify.
The procurement was done through the region, and our engagement letter was issued to the region and was dealt with their lawyers, so. And it's no change to what the statements you would have seen in previous years too, so it's not a substantial change in the type of report that you're seeing from previous years.
So if we want additional information besides a couple of lines.
You can do it, yeah.
So
We would just have to be engaged to do such.
Engaged to do that.
Yeah.
And so you're engaged through the Niagara region, not the police.
Well, yeah.
How long is the contract for? It's with Deloitte?
5 years, I believe.
5 years. This is year 1?
Yeah.
Of 5?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we want additional information, you wouldn't take that direction from this board or this police service?
No, I mean, we can definitely discuss that, and we can change our engagement for, like, we can amend the engagement letter. Like, it doesn't have to stay this way. If you want to see further information, that's something we can discuss for future years.
Okay. Can we get a copy through Chair of the engagement letter this year and how we can maybe adjust it for future years? And perhaps that, I'm fine approving this today, but perhaps that a copy of this be referred to the Finance Committee with the engagement letter so we can recommend perhaps a different structure for future years. I mean, really to give the public beyond, it's not as helpful for this board, I believe. But if that's how you were instructed to proceed, then that's how you're instructed to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Marshall.
Yeah, to Member Barrick, several years ago, a presentation was made by the region for us to cut back the audit, and there was a $10,000 saving, and the region, excuse me, advised us that they were making that change. It wasn't an option that the board had.
If I may, so with respect, we have the high level numbers, and it's just seeking to drill down on each of those high level line items, which if that information I'm sure we have, it's just for this board to look at them possibly through the Finance Committee or other, especially leading into a difficult budget year. I think that information would be helpful to guide us.
Excuse me, just one question about this point. When do you have to be notified, or how much lead time do you have to have so we can get this expanded for next year?
I think we can discuss in the fall. Would be,
Okay, so we have the next few months to make a motion or whatever we wish to do to do this. Thank you. Member Bonham.
It's just for my clarification. I think I've had this conversation in the past, but my understanding of what you're doing is you're accepting as information a basis for accounting from either the region or the service, and then auditing as to whether or not the presentation of results is in conformance with that basis of accounting, as opposed to auditing the veracity of any of the information. You're auditing whether or not the system is consistent with the system selected. Is that true or false?
Yeah, so our audit is to report on whether the statement is prepared in all material respects in accordance with the basis of accounting as noted in that note to the statement, so yes.
So in other words, you're certifying methodology as opposed to accuracy of information?
Well, we do look at the accuracy of the numbers.
Well, I don't see a comment to that effect, unless I'm misreading the statement. Your opinion is that it's prepared in all material respects in accordance with the basis of accounting. That to me is the opinion that's expressed here. I don't read an opinion that says that we've also examined the information and verified the accuracy of said information. Thank you.
Well, that is standard wording under the Canadian auditing standards, so we don't typically amend the wording in the auditor's reports. I don't know if that answers your question.
You done?
Yeah, thank you.
So, Member Barrick, I'd appreciate it if you would have conversation with your position of Corporate Services Chair for the region with Jason Burgess, the Commissioner, and Member Marshall, who's the Finance Chair of the Police, and if you want to make changes, make a motion on it in the future coming up, whatever. Thank you. Any other questions of the presenter?
Excuse me. Chair?
Sorry?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Already you don't hear me. I just, Lisa would like to make a comment if she could.
So just for some clarity, Member Marshall is correct. A few years ago, we did change the statements a bit. That was a joint discussion between us and the region, and it was to make it more consistent with the way we report to on a regular basis, because the auditors used to present the financial statements in a different format. And we asked them to represent the financial statements in a format that was consistent with how we report and how we budget, and that was made prior to this auditor being engaged. This did go out as a joint region. It did go under the region as a procurement through their procurement team, and they procured the entire audit, the one of the region and the one of the service. This group was engaged a little bit differently than the prior ones group was engaged, and the financial statements are a little less than they used to be, and we did express concern. I know Laura expressed concerns that we didn't have a separate management letter, we didn't have a separate engagement letter. We did express those concerns, but they were engaged a certain way and they followed how they were engaged. We did express those concerns, so I would appreciate a letter from this board asking that we have a separate management letter and a separate representation letter. We did want that ourselves because we wanted to have a different engagement, and we would like the financial statements to actually encompass a little bit more. We had expressed that exact same concern, and they were just doing as they were engaged to do. So I would appreciate support from the board on that. The other point is that we did present a board report in February 2016, and that's where we usually get into the wholesome discussions of the details, because the auditors are not engaged to go into the details, and we expect the more wholesome discussions as to what makes up the financial statements at that point. They don't get into that details that much, and we tend to try and ask for those questions in that when we present internally our numbers, and then if there's a difference between that they find, if there's a material difference, then we discuss those at this point, which there has never been a material difference, but if there was, so they're not expected at this point to go into that much detail. So we could go back if you want to bring that one forward for more detail, but that was done in February 2017.
Member Barrick.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the comments from staff. If it's appropriate or necessary to request through a motion for a separate management letter and engagement letter for the police services, I'm happy to move that. I'm not sure if it would be directed to the region or if it would be directed to Deloitte, to corporate services. Okay, so I'd like to move that motion. If Deb, you got a capture of that.
Second. Okay, and that's seconded by Member Castellan. Any discussion on that motion? Member Ganzel.
I'm in favor of the motion. Do we not have to include some sort of detail to expand this so that, other than the motion say we want to do something, should we not be detailing the additional drilling down or more in-depth reporting that we want to see going forward?
Thanks. I think the motion actually will kickstart that conversation more formally. And, you know, with respect, there's a lot of smaller organizations that they have budgets of $10 or $15 million, and their financial statements or their statement of operations is like 30, 40 pages. And here we're $135 million, and it's a half a page. And it doesn't seem to be transparent, and so that's my concern. And there may be some other reasons for security, not to have certain information public that's drilled down, and I respect that. But I think that's the nature of maybe the request. to get a little more information to provide to the public as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. No other questions? All those in favor? Carried. That's it for the questions for the presenter? No other questions? Okay, all those in favor of accepting this? Carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, next we have consent agenda items, and I'd like to move them in block from items 128 to 154. Can I have a mover and seconder for 128 to 154? Member Bonham, Member Caslin as a seconder. And that, so I'll take the first question from someone and identify which one you want, and then the other questions on that item. Who wants to be first? Member Ganzel.
Thank you. And this one deals with board report number 137. This is on the issue dealing with child pornography. It's on page number 3. I note in the chart that is there in reported incidents from 2013, 14, and 15, I can sort of see a bit of a pattern in 13 and 14, a bit of a drop in 15, but I see an increase of almost threefold to 142 reported incidents in 2016. Criminal charges I see are up as arrests, which I think are a good thing there, and they relate to the incidents reported. Well, what has changed in, are the public more aware of reporting, or have we been able to provide more resources internally to pursue these matters?
Yeah, thank you. We did have a big year last year as well. You'll recall there were some very significant child pornography cases and involving child abuse. But the massive increase that we see here is based primarily on the increase in technology, the more public awareness, our ability through our cybercrime unit and others to track this better, and also becoming more involved and integrated with groups right across the province. So we'll get calls for assistance. We'll have things come in from other areas and from umbrella organizations that assist us. But it's just, unfortunately, this is part of the whole issue that we explained to the board in regards to cybercrime. I think most of these pornography issues are cybercrime based through internet operations. And I think you'll see this continue to increase. It's kind of like, it's one of those things that probably has been as bad as it always has, but technology is catching up and we're forming greater alliances with integrated units. So we're capturing more of them now.
And in the unit, the child abuse unit and the internet crime exploitations unit, did we not add an additional person? I think it was a position that was converted in the last half year, last 6 months?
Yeah, we made some changes there, and we've also made a change in our umbrella organization within ourselves with our cybercrime unit that we've built and changed. We've moved them into a different area under a different supervisory role. So there have been additional personnel and also the integration, as I said, with units across the province and the country.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Comments on this item? Member Bonham?
Yeah, Jeff, just to follow up through you, Chair, I noted the same increase that Member Ganzel spoke to, and I'm just wondering if there's been any change in criteria, which has brought something that heretofore hadn't been considered to be child porn into that envelope that may have lent itself to the increase that we're seeing. Thank you.
Yeah, not really, not new legislation or such, or changes in the law, not so much that would influence this, but I really think it's part of the issue of the changing ability of technology, where just about anybody can do any of this on their phone, and you know, it's like a leapfrog game as we continue in law enforcement to keep up our ability to capture them. So it's just, I think it's the increase in technology primarily.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this item? Okay, I have a comment on it, and I highlighted the same thing as Ken brought out, and I'm astounded by how it went up, and the chiefs explained it. But the budget items, our budget is going to be affected so much by cybercrime and other things like terrorism, that how things have changed. Chief, on the cybercrime items, is there a want, or is the province, the OPP and that, looked at a joint force on something like this? Because, or is there such a thing right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, in fairness, there was a want, and in fact, we came to the board and hoped to expand that unit last year, and we're not successful. from a budgetary standpoint. So we made changes within the organization and moved people from different areas to supplement as best we could. But there is a provincial strategy and a national strategy for cybercrime, which is being built, and that's why we felt it was imperative to form our own cybercrime unit. Basically, the way it's described is it's like a pyramid where the federal agencies and international agencies are at the top doing the massive international around the world piece. The provincial strategy fits in the middle, which is being headed by the OPP, but it's a lot like our provincial anti-terrorism strategy, where they will second, not necessarily take people away, but we'll all work together in that middle section. And then at the bottom of the pyramid is the base, is the local police agencies. So we will all feed into this provincial strategy and national strategy to help integrate and make use of it. So actually forming a group or a building somewhere else to do it, not necessarily, but the strategy is being built, and we will fit in at the base of that from the local level.
So the strategy is being set up now, it's not in place yet?
It's
right?
Mostly in place. It's primarily the biggest part is for the local agencies to fill in the foundation at the bottom. The OPP has been working very hard, integrated with others, and as has the National Police Service, to build the top part. So we work with them hand in hand anyways. We do now. The actual formalization of it is not yet complete.
Okay, thank you. No other questions on this item? Member Ganzel, you still have the floor.
The next item I'd like to ask some questions on is number 149. It's the Marine Unit. And this is just basically clarification on this. Having the opportunity through Superintendent Bench to visit that location in the last couple of years twice, I always come away impressed with the services that Marine and Tactical and our dive team carry out of our emergency service unit. But on page 4, just for my own, I guess, re-education, is the TSG calls for service. If I remember, this is the Marine unit folks that are cross-trained with Emergency Task Force. And that's this list for 2016 of the 30 calls, that's their support of ETF-related calls?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. It's the tactical support group. So they take on the role of a containment unit and allows our tactical unit to take on more offensive roles such as hostage rescue and whatnot.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Any other questions or comments on that item? You still have the floor.
Thank you again. Now, this item is number 150. It is the Underwater Search and Recovery Unit report covering the year of 2016. On page 5, there's a couple of incidents there, numbers 32, 33, and 34. Skeleton remains recovery. Did these eventually lead to a homicide investigation, or were they of a historical significance? I mean, was this an item of one of the lake battles from the War of 1812, or something of that nature? Like, what happened? That's really what I'm after.
All three of those are from the same incident. You'll see they have the same incident number, so it references probably 3 different dates where they were doing dives. We don't know right now. The right person isn't here to answer that. It's either a missing person that they had suggested to look in that area for. It may be associated to a homicide or someone else from outside the area, but we get an answer for you on that.
But it is now being treated as an active investigation.
Well, it certainly was then. I don't know the outcome of it without looking it up, but we'll get that answer and let you know.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other comments on this report? Are you done? Any other comments on this? Member Barrick.
Thank you. Just on the same report, perhaps all of the annual reports in general here, are there comparators for us to consider? And I mean through other services throughout Ontario. So how do we stack up, I guess? I know municipalities kind of used to be OMBI, Ontario Municipal Benchmark Initiative, but is there anything similar that it's good information, but in isolation of anything else, it's tough to consider how we're doing and in terms of driving resources behind certain areas that need to be improved.
Yeah, I think the Superintendent Bench has advised me that there are only 5 dive units across the province. So not everyone has one. It's a shared resource that we're involved in, and our marine unit, because of the amount of water that we have, obviously, is one of the most exemplary, highly trained dive units and recovery units in the province. So I think comparison to other areas I'm not sure what it would tell us, other than because each one of these, it's many of our units do proactive kind of work, but when they're actually doing dives, they're responding to a request for assistance to actually dive for something, obviously. So I'm not sure what it would tell. We do report on this annually every year, so I guess a comparison to previous years against ourselves we could provide. But I think if we were, if you were to look at the Northern Ontario OPP dive team, what they cover, the totally different environment, different areas, different things. I'm not sure what kind of a comparison that would assist with, but.
Okay, thanks. So I'm hearing there is no real comparator for not just the information, but others as well currently.
Against we don't compare against the other four dive teams in the province. No.
Okay, thank you. And if someone can just jog my memory, we put out an annual report to the public every year, right? Is all of this detailed information in that one kind of public document that goes out?
We give general statistics on different things, but not this type of detail here, no.
Okay, thank you.
Member Burke, do you have any questions? Member Ganzel's done. Do you have any other items that you have questions on?
Thanks. Just on the disclosure of secondary employment, that's report 138. There was a mention of an individual who was in the civilian side and who did some HR consulting work. I guess the question is, are they doing HR work for the service and HR consulting on the side? And then is there, if so, is there a clear distinction?
If I can.
In order, this member is a certified human resource leader, and just recently she was promoted, but she had a job that didn't allow her, at the time she had a job that didn't allow her to keep the skills or use the skills that would allow her to remain a certified human resource leader. So she was doing some consulting just on areas that she's an expert in because she has a lot of years of experience, and she was just doing it. It has no conflict of interest. We checked. There's no conflict. It was to help her keep her leadership ability. She's since been promoted, so I'm not sure if she will be continuing these consulting services. She has a wealth of knowledge, and people tend to come to her when they're putting in a policy. Smaller organizations are putting in a policy. They tend to come to her just to consult, to help them just put in some policies on job evaluation and those types of things. So it's very limited, and we check there's no conflict of interest in any of the work she does.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that report? Okay, I have one. There's one officer on there that is a member of the Thorold Volunteer Fire Department. Can you please pass along our compliments, whoever does, to a person like that's serving the community as well on that? I like to hear things like that, so if you don't mind. Member Barrick, do you have any other items? Anyone? Member Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Just give me a chance to fold back here. First item is on 130. Quick question to through you to the chief. I think is the rates that have been charged, have they been adjusted for the latest contract negotiation?
That's exactly what it is. It's to reflect the new contract settlement.
And we have always had a 15% markup. That markup has remained?
I think it was 20% administration fee, and that remains, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's that one.
Any other comments on that item? Go ahead.
Thank you. Again, through you to the chief, on 133, I note the rates of payment for the informants has taken a dramatic increase. how do we establish what's a typical payout? What is it worth?
We have first of all the informant payments are handled by one person who's responsible within the service, and they have a criteria matrix that they use to assess the amount, the value of the information provided, the results of the information, and it's based on that. So if you see something to one particular informant here, it was received a payment of $750. I can't at all obviously touch on what the information was, right, but I can assure you that it was probably incredibly valuable and successful information in relation to one of our serious investigations. So there is a matrix, and it's developed and used, and they work in conjunction with right across the province. I don't think they're all exact the same, but they work with the same form of formula.
Well, would you say then that the information is leading to more arrests or to more convictions than they used to? Excuse me.
It would be, again, it would determine on what's going on at any given time. There can be times when we would have no payments, but if we have major investigations underway or an informant approaches us with good information, so there's no real kind of way to strategize it out, but each piece of information goes through a very rigorous examination by so if it's an officer on the street that develops an informant and gets some information in accordance with the criminal code, the form goes through Intel to one person who's responsible to review all of them, and it gets signed all the way up. I mean, the final signing of the checks is myself and Deputy McCullough before it's authorized. So it goes through a very stringent process but beyond giving you much more than that in public, is probably not appropriate. But you can be assured that it is properly, carefully examined, and the payments are made in accordance with the information and the impact on public safety in the community.
Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions on those items? Member Stewart.
Thank you. Just through you, Chief, on that last point, just for maybe it's more curiosity, but the matrix, is it possible to be shared either maybe in confidential or with the board, just so we have an understanding of the matrix? Not with any details of applying it, or is it at a level where we didn't want to go there? I'm just curious.
The criminal code itself in the Supreme Court of Canada is so protective of anything around informants that I think it's something you're going to have to trust us on. I think it might walk us into an area of potential liability.
Member Marshall, you still have the floor.
Thank you. On item 135, on page 4, there's a chart. I'm sorry, page 130, or report 135, 136. I beg your pardon.
136.
Yes, sorry. I'm reading upside down. And on page 4, I find the headings a little confusing. The criminal charges are laid, cleared otherwise. Can you maybe explain how somebody would be cleared otherwise from a child abuse?
Yes, sorry. On the page of top 5, the next page, we do actually give you the definitions there. So cleared otherwise is one of 2 criteria. At least one accused person has been identified, and 2, there's sufficient evidence to lay a charge in connection with the incident, but for one of the reasons listed in the lengthy list below, the accused is processed by other means. So the number of different ways that it can be dealt with, where it's dealt with in accordance with law, but doesn't end up before a criminal court.
Okay. I did read that, and I assumed that was one of those things, but I'd like to have it clarified. Investigation suspended and the case closed. The numbers seem awfully high, Chief.
Yeah, and that's also identified on page 6, and that's a situation where the investigation is exhausted, little potential exists for solving it, or the parents or victim of the crime have elected to have the investigation terminated. Pending so it really just puts it into abeyance. If there's new evidence that comes forward, the case can be reopened.
So the police, being the organization, decide to not pursue a child abuse case?
No, not at all, sir. They pursued it to the end where there's nothing left that they can do, no other further evidence that is coming forward or the other reason indicated in that paragraph. And it's not that they don't pursue it. It's basically gone cold or stagnant. It still remains active. If any new evidence comes forward, it's reactivated instantly. So it's based on the fact that there is no further evidence available at this time, but will be reinstituted if some surfaces.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this item? Member Marshall, do you have anything else? Yes. Okay.
On 149, I know Ken covered this earlier, just a quick question. On page 4, there's the explosive disposal calls. I don't understand why the Marine would have explosives.
Superintendent Brett can first show them all your fingers.
Very briefly, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. As indicated, the members of the Marine Unit are cross-trained in a number of disciplines, and there are 2 that are explosive disposal technicians. And we've actually expanded their capacity where they can deal with explosives that are in a submerged environment. It's quite a skill set to have. We're fortunate to have it. With respect to those particular calls, it could even be relating to something as simple as a marine flare that's dropped during the search for missing boaters through search and rescue. When these things wash up on shore, they are dangerous, and they're appropriately marked that they're explosive in nature, and they're not to be handled or abused in any way, and that authorities are to be contacted, and they would naturally respond to those circumstances and deal with the threats presented by that item when they do wash on shore. That's from my experience and my background there, that's more likely what that represents. Unless they were supporting other units with your typical explosive threat calls. But in the marine environment, it's more likely with the flares.
Member Castle, do you have a comment on this item? Okay, anything else, Member Marshall?
On 151, sexual assault reports. You may remember the Globe did an article back a few months ago on sexual assaults. And that information was available to this board, but we never got a chance to discuss it. I'm not sure what happened. There was a concern raised by the Globe, I think it was the Globe in the article, that the reporting was not consistent across Ontario, and that a lot of unfounded reports related to Native women, if my memory serves me right. And have we taken that report seriously and looked at it and made any adjustments to our reporting or evaluation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I reported to the board that I believe it's Kim McAllister that's leading it. And Inspector Jim Prinzen, in charge of investigative services, is they're reviewing all of ours. They've gone back a number of years working on that. All police services across the province, I know, are doing that as well. I think it's, in fact, across the country. And a lot of it dealt with the fact that StatCan or Jurastat, somebody changed their definition some time ago, so there was some inconsistencies in that. But yes, we are in the midst of doing that. We're not completed our review yet, but we're taking it very seriously and looking at them.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
So any comments on this item?
Yeah.
Member Casson?
Yeah, so on 151 as well, just looking at the statistics and just trying to drill down just a little further. And I see that in 2016, the number of suspended has close to doubled what the average was before. What would be the reason for that?
You know, I think that question was asked last time, and it escapes me at this very moment, but I'll get you an answer before the end of the meeting. We can check with someone. There was an explanation for that. And I'm sorry, I just don't recall what it is, but we'll find out.
Okay. Along with Councillor or Member Marshall, I'm just looking a little further into this situation based on the article that was that noted Niagara as having a high rate of unfounded, and I just want to make sure that we look at it carefully. Thank you.
Any other comments on this item? Okay, I have one. It was not reported on from a year and a half ago where we got kudos from the Ottawa paper about being a transparent board and the service being transparent on our meetings and that. And I mentioned it at the time because it was in the Ottawa Citizen, I believe, but I could be wrong on that. So my question to you, Chief, this was all blown up on this item because of the Globe Mail article. Is that right, Member Marshall? Was it Globe Mail? And so if they were to call now with questions, because I believe the comment was there were certain services out there that didn't respond to their calls. And I think we were one of them. I'm not sure. I could be wrong on that. But regardless, they didn't get the information they wanted. If they called with questions on this incident or other incidents, they would call your office, and we'd respond to them now. My question to you is, we had any more calls from the press? Like, are they, for lack of a better word, satisfied and are being transparent on this to the extent that we can be? Do you know?
I believe we've received another recent request. It's, I believe Robin Doolittle is the investigative reporter that's done this across the province. So we've provided some. We discussed this again. I think the most recent request is being reviewed to determine whether or not it's information we can supply. And if it is, in a transparent fashion, we will. If there are things that we can't, then we'll explain why to her as well.
Okay, so I just want to compliment the press, I guess, on this one for the same reason sometimes I chastise the press. In cases like this, we need them on for bringing out items like this, and if we're faulty at all, hopefully it goes through your office or our office and we make our changes like we have. So I appreciate what you've done. Member Castle, you still have the floor. Do you have any other items? Does anyone else have any other items on this? Member Bonham.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you. I'd like to direct your attention to 140. And that's the annual report on parental/non-parental abductions and attempts. I think it's an understatement to say that when these kinds of incidents occur, they're very alarming to the public. I do believe that they generate or could generate Amber Alerts if they go far enough. And I'm also noting in our 2016 statistics, there were 3 such incidents that we followed up. Unfortunately, 2 of them were found to be totally unfounded. I'm assuming that in each of these incidents, because of the nature of them, they're consuming a lot of policing resources to track them down as quickly as possible. They become an emergent preoccupation, I would assume, for the service. And I'm just wondering that once we make the determination that the allegation has been unfounded, I would assume that we want to provide as much deterrence as possible such that those who may want to abuse the system are dissuaded from doing so. So I'm asking whether or not we pursue charges with regard to mischief, nuisance or whatever, once we've made a determination that this has been essentially a wild goose chase. Thanks. And if not, why not?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but rather than say unfortunately they turned out to be unfounded, I would say fortunately they turned out to be unfounded. The issue, each case would be reviewed on its own merits as to if there was some improper information supplied or if it was an obvious attempt, and the investigating officers would discuss with the Crown whether it was appropriate to proceed with public mischief charge if it's a false report altogether. So we would examine those. In these cases, I can't tell you whether or not there was charges laid in relation to that. I do know, I know the third case involved in there involving the Egyptian court order was fairly well publicized across the region. That, in fact, resulted recently with a guilty plea by the mother who brought that allegation forward, so she was charged and convicted in relation to that. But the other 2. But certainly if it was a blatant, obvious public mischief, it would be examined by the investigators and they would approach the Crown Attorney to discuss the prospect of conviction and whether or not to proceed in the criminal courts.
Thank you.
Okay, any other items, Member Bonham, or no? Any other items on these consent agenda items? Okay, we've had a mover and seconder. All those in favor of receiving these? Carried. We have no unfinished business. The next is new business, item number 155, the 8th District radio coverage police response times. Can I have a mover and seconder on this, please? Member Bonham, Member Stewart. Comments or questions on this item? Member Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Chief. I noted in the report that there have been some adjustments made out in District 8 to try to provide some more extra police presence in the Smithville area. I was just curious of what the effect of that might be for the rest of District 8, since I don't believe we heard about adding any service members out there. So I'm just wondering, are we just robbing Peter to pay Paul on this one, or how was that done? I mean, I read the report thoroughly twice, as a matter of fact. I'm just curious of are we just trying to shift things around and make it work, or are we in a situation where with growth out there, we might have to be looking at increasing the presence out there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to 8th District, I mean, we have a set number of officers that are assigned to that area, and for the most part, they're free to patrol within that district. The direction that's been given is when the opportunity presents to provide additional patrol within the Smithville area. That's not a guarantee that they're going to be in Smithville, and that's not a guarantee that's going to take them from Beamsville, let's say, in order to patrol in Smithville. So it's obviously we still dispatch our officers on a priority basis, and when they're available to provide that extra patrol in whether it's Beamsville, whether it's Smithville, whatever, we try to encourage our officers to get out of the car and be more proactive and more approachable and visible to the public as often and wherever possible. So we haven't seen any impact negative as a result of this new direction.
Yeah, no. Okay. Member Marshall.
Thank you. On that same issue, there's been 2 measured response times, one of 3 minutes and one of 4 minutes. And I have to commend the service on being able to produce that kind of timing, because I don't think there's another area in the city that you could get that short a response to a crime. And so kudos to you and your team. Thank you.
Any other comments on this item? Okay, I'd like to talk about it. I guess it's Acting Staff Sergeant Mark Diagidio. Did I get that right? Okay. Who did the report, and I want to compliment him on doing this report. I presume it was him. Did Mayor Joyner and Mrs. Job get a copy of this report, because it said we were going to respond to them on it, or did they meet with her? Because she, in the instructions or directions, she is to contact me in 30 days to make sure things have been met and been discussed, and she's happy with everything. I knew she was nervous at the time when she said that, I think it was, I don't know, 10 minutes before they got there or something, and it was proven wrong, but please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I know that Detective Sergeant Egidio met with, I'm sorry,
Mrs. Job.
Mrs. Job, and had lengthy conversation with her in regards to that incident, and has followed up with her. I'm not certain whether he followed up with the mayor or not, but I can look into that further.
Okay, if you don't mind talking to Deb, and whoever gets the report to Mayor Joyner, I'd appreciate, or has a talk, whatever's easier. But I want to make we said we would get back to him on confirming these times, and I want to thank you for being getting that information so quickly at that meeting, Brian. So because that calmed down our surprise and in her comments. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And just with respect to whether or not they received a copy of the report, they have not received a copy of the report.
Okay, whatever you can provide to Mayor Joyner, please do. And Mrs. Job, you've already met with her, so we're good there. Thank you.
Will do, thanks.
I just exchanging hand signals with Deb, and she agreed that she's going to send it on behalf of the board.
Thank you very much. Any other comments on this item? All those in favor? Carried. Next item, number 156, the use of international mobile subscriber identity technology, the wiretapping report we had asked for. Can I have a mover and seconder first? Member Barrick, seconded by Member Caslin, questioned by Member Barrick.
Thank you, Chair. Just if I may, on the previous report, I think it's very well done, and it demonstrates how responsive we are and going to the local communities for our board meetings is demonstrating some results, and the feedback from the service is it's now being implemented. So fantastic work to you and your team. On this particular report, so thanks for putting it together, because there were several questions. Much of it kind of brought on from the public and on behalf of the public or the community. So thanks for that. I think this is great. I'm happy that this report is also public for those who want to take a look at it. But number 6 in the report, point 6, that was the what are all the measures taken by NRPS to protect against collection of data from innocent cell phone users? And part of the response is data is collected by partner agencies. So I just wanted to ask, which partner agencies do collect that information?
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Chair, and with respect, sir, one of the reasons it was referred to as public agencies is that we don't actually have the authority to disclose outside of our agencies what our capacity is. And for that reason, it was limited to just partner agencies, which are policing agencies in Canada.
Okay. So if my rationale for asking is, if people have those questions, they should ask those public agencies. But if they don't know who they are, then that is what it is. The other one was with respect to annual report. In both 9 and 10, it mentions reporting to any entity other than the Solicitor General of Canada and Attorney General of Ontario may constitute a criminal offense. And then I think in 10, there's a reference that should the board want that information, the board should obtain a legal opinion. And so I guess one question is, if the board is only asking for information with respect to this service, certainly not asking for whatever the Solicitor General is getting from all of Ontario, it's still the notion that it may require a legal opinion to provide information to this board for this service, even if it's in confidential?
Yes, sir. Really, my reason for writing that in here is just that we make sure collectively that we use the utmost caution in making sure that we don't contravene any part of the criminal code, which I believe is contained within 193 to 195. It was the opinion early on as we were discussing this that the need to report is sort of filled. It's achieved through reporting to either the Solicitor General's office or the Attorney General's office, and that it ought not be reported outside of those confines. So perhaps there is some level that is acceptable, and I just want to make sure that we don't go down a road where we're contravening those directions.
No, I respect that and appreciate that. Is there a way, without having to get a legal opinion per se and spending more money on legal, to pick up the phone and just ask the Solicitor General or Attorney General, and I think their response would be more than satisfactory without having to get a legal opinion?
Unfortunately, I think what we presented in the report is our opinion to you, and to go further beyond that, I think it would be obligatory on the board to actually seek a legal opinion if you don't agree with what we said, or if you want further confirmation of it. We're telling you what's in the criminal code, in our opinion, and I think I don't think it would be a lengthy. It wouldn't be a big bill for you, but you may want to ask your board solicitor to provide you with an opinion as to on those 2 paragraphs, and then maybe bring it back for further discussion if it feels that's wrong. But we've quoted what's in the code, and I think that's what the service is going to be bound by.
Yeah, thanks for that. I to your point, I'm not looking for a legal opinion per se, but just to what those 2 agencies would say, the Solicitor General and Attorney General. So whether that's someone in the service who picks up the phone and asks them, or Mr. McKeag who asked them, doesn't matter to me. And I know he's not here currently, but I don't know if that needs a board resolution, Chief, or I think Chair, sorry, or it can just be direction. That just as a final follow-up on that, if that's noted. Okay.
So Deb will move on that with the direction.
All right. And thanks again for preparing this report.
Any other comments on this report? Okay, Chief, I'd just like to compliment the report and just put it out there that this was inspired by a past board member as well as newspaper articles of 2 or 3 months ago. and with a number of questions, and we've been pretty transparent on this to the extent that you can be legally. So if they have any other questions, we don't hide anything here. They can either go through your office or through my office, through the PSB board, and we'll try and get the answers for them. But I think this is a pretty fulsome report, although I'm not an expert on these type of things. So thank you for that.
Brian just pointed out to me that we, we could blame the Federal Police Service for most of this problem, but since Bill's here, we're going to let this one slide for now.
Thank you for that. All those in favor of receiving this? Carried. The next item is the Memorandum of Understanding, the Ministry of Labor for Work-Related Investigations. A mover and seconder, please. Member Bonham, Member Marshall. Comments or questions on this? Member Barrick.
Thank you, Chair. So my first question is through you to staff. Will this result in any additional cost to the service? In other words, if the ministry decides, yeah, I think the police should, be the lead here, 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 and here, so that may generate more work and more time and money. So.
No, I don't believe so. This is really just clarifying roles and responsibilities and some tweaking, some wordings in relation to. We often get calls to factories or areas of workplace where there's been injuries, and they just have to determine whether or not police involvement. We're generally the first people there anyways, and then we call introduce before we sign off. If that's the board's wish.
Deb agrees. Yep. That's what we'll do.
Can you just supply us with the wording that you'd like in there then, Deb, and we'll run it by Woody again and then make sure that they're okay before. We can bring this back again in a month's time with that change if you wish. I don't think there's any urgency.
I'm personally satisfied if there's a bit of a sunset clause in there that be reviewed in 5 years, then I don't think it doesn't have to come back if that's appropriate.
Okay. It's appropriate.
Okay. So then could the direction be that we'll give Woody a call?
Okay.
If he agrees to that, we'll put that comment in, and then if that happens, the board gives the chief the authority to sign off?
Great.
Okay. Does the motion that we're accepting here have to be amended, or is that just direction again? Okay. Any other comments on this item? Okay, everybody knows the changes or understands the changes we're putting to that motion. All those in favor? Carried. Any new business for public? Okay, I have one last item before the chief leaves. Ryan McGuire, can you come to the podium, please? We have a citizen who appears at every meeting we have, and he even went to Smithville. Ryan comes to them all, and he'd like to just pass a compliment to the chief or criticism. I doubt if it's criticism. But Ryan, you have the floor for a couple minutes. Go ahead. Press the button.
Okay, good. All right, I don't know what to say. Thanks for allowing me to come. Good luck in your future endeavors, and congratulations on your retirement. Yeah.
Okay, that's good enough.
I don't know what to say.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Just for the record, we're not related that we know of, correct?
Nope, the ancestry's in the map.
That's good. Now, Ryan's been a good citizen advocate. He started writing letters to me probably 4 years ago, and then started to attend, and I think you've noticed he's probably been at just about every one of our board meetings just out of interest and knowledge, and so he's a good citizen that likes to involve himself here. So, Brian, take care of Ryan when I'm gone.
Okay, new business. Okay. Okay, so Ryan.
Opportunity this morning to speak with Superintendent White on the matter, and there was a number of questions that were put forward by some of the residents in Niagara Lake, and obviously a concert of this nature does affect the entire region, not just us. So I'm not speaking as a resident of town, but more as a member of the board representing the people in the Niagara region. This is our fourth concert that is taking place, and with each one of them in the past there have been issues, and I think the folks with the Niagara Regional Police and also within Parks Canada finally improved their skill set in putting these things forward. I had some questions, which I think if we get it onto the public agenda, it's probably the best, and it doesn't compromise the operational aspects of policing in the region. But if the chief could just comment briefly on the number of officers he intends to deploy, the supervision that's going to take place, crowd control at the more importantly, there were major traffic issues in the 2015 concert when it exited. There were reports of 4 to 4.5 hours of being able to get out of town. And I think, again, from a conversation I had with the superintendent this morning, I would suspect that some of that, or most of that, is probably going to be alleviated. But if the chief could just comment generally on what is put in place for the concert to be held in Niagara Lake on Sunday, just 2nd of July, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, certainly. I will turn to Cindy in a minute and let her update the board basically on what she's provided for you. She's overseen the development of the operational plan for this event. But I will also point out from the concert in 2015, you will know that there was a great deal of debriefing that went on after that to determine what could be done better or different changes to deal with crowds of that size, and that's all been implemented into the process here. We can't guarantee anything. All we can do is be best prepared, and I'm comfortable that we are, but I think if you don't mind, I'll turn to Cindy and let her, she can highlight the work that's gone into the plan for this.
Thank you, sir. Through the chair. As you are aware, this concert has gone on for 4 years, and every year we've reviewed our process to improve it, see where we can grow, see what we've learned, and how we can improve upon it. And we've worked quite diligently to improve the traffic flow, any safety concerns, etc. I can let everyone know that the number of officers that we have hired is quite significant, and Parks Canada as well has hired a significant number of officers. We're also working with Parks Police and private security as well, have hired quite a number of officers to ensure that this event occurs quite safely.
And again, thank you for that. I wanted to commend through the chief and the deputies, the superintendent, the Inspector McCaffrey in charge of Niagara Lake and Niagara Falls. I did have an opportunity this morning to look at the confidential component of this, and extremely appreciated the work that is done. I'm impressed. And compliments to Sergeant Bill Shoenails, who both Bob and I know from our past lives. Has a steady hand on this, and I know he's part of the organization as well. So I commend the service on what they're doing, and I suspect with all hands on deck approach, this will come off without a hitch. So again, thank you.
So I'd like to expand on that a little bit. Superintendent White or Inspector McCaffrey, if you feel it's warranted, because I brought it up at Regional Council again last time about the Mewburn Road Bridge. And the Mewburn Road Bridge, that's another access out of Niagara Lake. And we've been sitting there with that bridge collapsed, or no, being blocked for 4 or 5 years now. And the City of Niagara Falls, I'm told, has reached a deal with the CN or whatever railway is there. But I don't know if somebody has to be kicked in the butt, and I'm not talking about City of Niagara Falls on this, by way of a letter, because with that accident that happened 2 days ago with the OPP at the Glendale Avenue, it blocked traffic through going through St. David's, and that it was backed up considerably. And the last concert was there, was it Mumford, is that the group or whatever? It was lined up for a mile or half a mile through there. And that other access way is so good for when we have problems like this or concerts. So if you would think about a letter, I would endorse it 100%, but that has to be your call on this. Whether, you know, a nice letter to the City of Niagara Falls or the CN or whoever you think, and we'll work with you on saying, can we get this going, because it hurts traffic coming out of there, especially when there's a problem or a concert or something. Niagara Lake only really has 4 routes in: Lakeshore, Niagara Stone Road, the Parkway, and Creek Road. And if there's anything major, it's a terrible place to get in and out of. So I'd like you to think about that. I'm in no hurry, but I've been told this and told this and told this, that this bridge will be replaced or whatever, and we got to get it moving on it. So, do you have a comment on this, Member Castle? Thank you.
Yeah, just on that, you probably aren't aware, but engineering is in progress for the replacement of the bridge. An agreement has been struck between Niagara Lake, Niagara Falls, and CN, and it is moving forward.
So I'm not putting you on the spot, but when do you think people in government hate it when you ask when, but what's your opinion as towards construction? Have they talked about it or no?
I'll get back to you on that one, Bob.
Okay. Superintendent White, forget it for now. I'll get my conversation over here. Thank you. Okay, we're done unless there's other new business. That's it for the public agenda. Acting, or I guess you're still Superintendent Flynn.
Thank you, sir. Just follow up to the earlier question about the sexual assault report and the concern about the rise. I think it's 104 more suspended cases than there were in 2014. I just been in touch with our sexual assault unit. While that is true, we've also seen over 125 more reported cases during that period. So the increase in suspended has gone up with the increase in reported cases. I can tell you as a former investigator, it's always disappointing when you can't quickly clear a case. But again, suspended means we have enough information. We believe that something has happened in these cases, and we've just reached the end of what's available to us at that time from an investigative perspective. So they do remain open. One of the things we also know is that across the nation, across North America, that the vast majority of sexual assaults go unreported. So we're also hoping that this is a sign that there's a trust in the police and that there's an increased reporting of the actual sexual assaults that do occur in our community, that people are coming forward. Thank you.
Any comments for Superintendent Flynn? Thank you very much for that. So that's the end of the public agenda here. Thank you very much.